Hello and welcome back to Matt Hayes Tottenham Blog. If you are new to the channel, my name is Matt and I'm a senior soccer analyst for Opta and Stats Perform. And today I'm going to give you the lowdown on Tottenham transfer target Florian Grillitsch, central defensive midfielder or centre-back for Austria and Hoffenheim. I've looked at a couple of games in particular to show exactly what he can bring to this Tottenham team, but maybe at the expense of one of the stalwarts in our side already. So if you are interested in that, do make sure to stick around and do hit that subscribe button as well if you are new to the channel for more analyses like this, plus the Tottenham Hotspur Transfer Talk series, which is back in full flow as we approach the January transfer window. But the first question you may have, of course, is who is Florian Grillitsch? Grillitsch is a 26-year-old centre midfielder or centre-back, as I mentioned, for Bundesliga side Hoffenheim and for the Austrian national team. He's made 11 starts in the Bundesliga this season with an extra one sub-appearance, bringing his total to 112 with Hoffenheim. Before that, he made 48 appearances for Werder Bremen in the competition as well. He scored 3 league goals with both sides for a total of 6, and his highest league finish in the Bundesliga is third in 2018 with Hoffenheim, but he's never finished inside the top 5 other than that. On the national level, he's made 26 appearances with 1 goal for the Austrian side and has also represented all youth sides for the country since under 17 level. Now, for this season, how's he getting on? Well, he missed the first 3 games of the season through a thigh injury. He then played 4 games in defensive midfield and since then has played as a centre-back, the centre-back in a back 3 in 7 of the last 8 league games. And when that change was made in Hoffenheim's system, they won 3 of the first 5 games with Grillitsch playing in centre-back, keeping clean sheets in all 3 of those victories. They had previously won 2 and 7. He's missed 2 games and they've drawn 2 since then as well. So definitely a big effect made as Grillitsch sat a little bit deeper in that Hoffenheim side. It's interesting kind of the development in his career because earlier on, he started as a much more attacking player. And even at the beginning of his time at Hoffenheim, he played a bit as an attacking midfielder. But there's been a kind of slow and eventual change for him to becoming a centre-back. He played 7 games as centre-back in the tail end of last season from February to April in 2021, which is his longest such stint as a centre-back in consecutive games in his career. He made 3 centre-back appearances in the previous season, only 2 in the season before that. So it has been a very gradual change for him to becoming a deeper lying player. Like I mentioned, an interesting pattern there in how he stepped back. And even looking back in 2013, he was the top scorer in the Austrian under-18 league with 22 goals. So definitely a massive shift in what he's looking to do there. And before we dive into what we're going to look at first of all, which is Ukraine against Austria in the Euro 2020 group stage, a game that I thought Austria played very similarly to how Tottenham have played in recent years and how I think we could play going forward. And we're going to look at the importance of Florian Grillitsch within that role and how essentially he was the metronome that kept Austria ticking over to a victory that sent them through to the knockout stages of the Euros for the first time in their history. But before we do that, let's take a look at the news stories that are linking Grillitsch to Spurs. Sky Sports in Germany have said in the last couple of days that Tottenham are interested in signing Hoffenheim midfielder Florian Grillitsch. The club have inquired already, joining Roma and AC Milan in the race for the Austrian, whose contract expires in the summer. Grillitsch is very, very likely to leave Hoffenheim for a top team. And a key point there is that his contract does expire at the end of this season, meaning Tottenham can approach him from the 1st of January and sign him on a pre-contract deal under the Bosman ruling. Sky and Austria are saying that Tottenham are keen on completing a deal for the playmaker. Not really a playmaker anymore, but it is unclear if interested parties will wait until the summer to sign him on a free or attempt to bring him in for a cut price in January. So there is still a chance that this deal can get done next month. An interesting point is that when Grillitsch signed for Hoffenheim from Werder Bremen back in 2017, he did sign his contract 6 months in advance. He was 22, so it's not really under the Bosman ruling, but that deal was done there. Now, moving on to the game in question, Ukraine against Austria, match day 3 of Euro 2020 Group C. And like I already mentioned, there are many similarities between the way Austria played in this game and the way that Tottenham, kind of these different tactical things that have become synonymous with Tottenham over the last couple of years. One that we're looking at quite right now in particular is while we're playing that wide 3 up top and kind of Lucas and Son kind of getting involved there with Harry Kane or Dele Alli as it was against Liverpool. Austria in this game, like we do, attempted to create these numerical overloads in the central positions, which not only causes problems right there in that immediate situation for the opposition team, but also creates a lot of space for the wing backs outside, which on the day for Austria were David Alaba and Stefan Leiner. Forward players very similarly dropping into these half spaces to pick up possession, something that we at times become frustrated with Harry Kane for doing. But Marcel Sabitzer, especially in this game, was dropping into those half spaces and picking up possession, which was really, really crucial in Austria's progression up the pitch throughout this game. Also, something that's maybe a bit more associated with Tottenham under Jose Mourinho, that asymmetrical back three where one fullback kind of tucks in at one side and the other bombs on. Kind of the reverse of what Tottenham are doing. It was Liner on the right-hand side who was dropping in a little bit narrower to allow David Alaba to push on the other side. So similar things there. And I think that's very important when we're looking at how Grillitsch played in this game and how we can actually bring that into Tottenham. And the first thing we're going to look at is the average positions in this game. So this graph courtesy of UEFA. So Florian Grillitsch there is the number 10, just sitting in the center circle. So Austria here attacking from right to left. So Grillitsch averaging in this game inside his own half, which for a centre midfielder in a team that had about 50% possession in the game, you wouldn't see very often. But it's a 4-1-4-1 there for Austria. With a lot of interchanging parts ahead of Florian Grillitsch. And we'll see this a little bit more as we break down the average positions in 15-minute spells in this game. But it's, like I mentioned, quite a narrow midfield in front of Grillitsch there that created that space to allow Stefan Leiner to number 21 there and David Alaba at number 8 to bomb forward and play very, very offensively, protected by Grillitsch, that number 10, sitting a little bit deeper. We break this down into the various 15-minute stages of the game. So you can see on the left-hand side, there's 2 pitches for the first half. The right-hand side, 2 pitches for the second half. I have Grillitsch there highlighted in yellow, the number 10 for each one of those. So you can see really for the first 75 minutes of that game played in a very similar position. And this is kind of just showing how happy he was to do the dirty work throughout this game. He's quite often, for example, the last man back at corners, which is very handy for those centre-backs being allowed to bomb forward. So the only goal in this game actually came in the 21st minute, Marcel Sabitzer scoring from a corner. And it's interesting to note that nothing really changes from Austria from a tactical standpoint. From there, it continues right on throughout the game, the way they're playing, despite the personnel switches in there. And the only time really where Grillitsch's role does change is in that last 50 minutes, as I have it there circled in blue. Stefan Ilsanker came on for Austria in the 72nd minute, a much more defensive player. Much more kind of famously defensive player, traditional defensive player, who came on and allowed Grillitsch maybe to play a little bit more advanced, taking on the role of Xaver Schlager, who have been very, very impressive on the right-hand side of that midfield in the first half. Now, the first thing we're going to look at is how important Florian Grillitsch was to the progression of the ball in this game for Austria, and he did so by dropping deep, kind of in a way that we remember Eric Dyer back in kind of the peak under Mauricio Pochettino, who was playing in that centre defensive midfield role, but quite often dropped in between the centre-backs from a defensive standpoint, but also very important in moving forward. And just to show, first of all, here, very much a 4-1-4-1 for Austria in and out of possession. You can see there Grillitsch circled in blue, but right from the very opening stages of the game, Grillitsch was dropping really, really deep in between those two centre-backs in Hinteregger and Dragovic to pick up possession. And while in this instance here, which I think is in the first 15, 20 seconds of the game, Bachmann, the goalkeeper, decides to go long. Grillitsch very early on showing what he's doing there, consistently sitting in between the centre-backs, looking to get on the ball. And really everything Austria tried to build came through Grillitsch. And it's such a big onus kind of to put on a player to be that one man in there quite often on his own, which, as you can see, the four midfielders ahead of him and even Marko Arnautovic on the left side of your screen there, number 7, there wasn't really much in front of him. And we're going to look a little bit later at Grillitsch's passing matrix to show exactly how he moved the ball up the pitch and exactly how he played his part in Austria getting forward, aside from the obvious passes that he made at times. And just to kind of emphasize how much trust there was put in Grillitsch, again, you see another example of him stepping out with the ball. There's a few times where he was dragged out of position, whether he ended up carrying the ball or he had initiated a bit of a press, where Schlager, his fellow right midfielder, stepped into that position that Grillitsch was in, just to keep the same kind of tactical flow within the game. And he wasn't really trusted in possession in those areas like Grillitsch was, and a lot more often than not, that ball went long instead of being played into Schlager. And Schlager himself has actually spoken about Grillitsch, and he said he's a really calming influence in the midfield and his distribution is fantastic. So we'll go through quite a number of quotes later or throughout the stream that just goes to show the appreciation that teammates and managers have for Grillitsch and exactly what he's able to do. But that trust that was instilled in him in such an important game for Austria, I think, is a very important point, and one that we'll continue to see as we go along. And aside from the direct influence that he had on the game, both in and out of possession, his presence in there was allowing Austria to commit a lot of numbers forward throughout the game, and they were regularly putting 5+ players into the box, with the fullbacks very advanced as well. So you can see 5 players in the box here. The man on the very right hand side there is Schlager. Grillitsch's centre midfield partner, who bombed forward down the right-hand side, and certainly wasn't short of options in there. And on the next picture we'll show you here, Marcel Sabitzer taking a shot, which I'm pretty sure was deflected out for a corner. But there's Schlager on the left corner of the 6-yard box. And you can even see David Alaba, the left back, just behind the referee there in the bottom of the picture. So a lot of numbers committed forward. And I know Ukraine do have a lot back, but on the transition, if Ukraine get out quickly, Grillitsch is there. And that safety that he offers the team around him, I think, gives them a lot more confidence in being able to get forward there. And the interesting thing is the tactical formations for this game had the official ones had Grillitsch and Schlager together in a 4-2-3-1. But when you look at the game, it's very, very obvious that was not the case. And Schlager was a lot more advanced, and Grillitsch really, as I mentioned earlier, doing that dirty work in there. And it's worth noting that Schlager kind of got most of the plaudits for this game because he was so influential in possession and going forward. He created a bit more than Grillitsch, but Grillitsch allowed him to do that in a way. Also, massive props to Schlager. He was incredible. But BreakingTheLines.com were talking about this game, and they said Austria aimed to create a numerical overload in front of Ukraine's 4-5-1 defensive shape in two areas. The first area in front of Ukraine's first pressing line, and the second at the right flank, and then using that to reach the central space. And even just going back to these average formations, you can see Grillitsch is a little bit more on the left-hand side, which is offering a bit more safety on that, as the pitch is kind of inverted and they force that ball out to the right. A lot of success out there for Stefan Leiner going forward when he wasn't in that asymmetrical back three. But Grillitsch was just incredible, and that security that he offered in there make the whole team a lot more expansive. And you can look at in possession, the way they were committing numbers forward, but also out of possession and this high press that they initiated at times. And you can see again those same five players, the Schlager, who on paper was playing alongside Grillitsch in that defensive position, the three in front, then Arnautovic up top as well. There was just so much security offered behind them, and they were allowed to initiate that high press. This example with Ukraine with a throw-in on their own defensive left flank. You can see Grillitsch circle there again. Even Stefan Leiner at that point is looking to get involved in that high press because of the safety that is offered there. You know, it's the very same idea out of possession as it was in possession. It's that press activated by these triggers that, you know, when you see that trigger, these players like Schlager don't really have to consider too much. They know once that trigger goes, they're gone, because there's that confidence in Grillitsch that he has them protected. And it's such a massive compliment, I suppose, to put on a player that they have that trust in him. Now, one thing that I was extremely impressed with, another thing I was extremely impressed in was Grillitsch's, I wouldn't call him a kind of a conservative player in terms of stepping up and making interceptions or making tackles, but every time he did it, he was successful. And having watched back the first 20-25 minutes of this game, I've picked out three examples in particular where he goes in, he steps up. This is about 5 seconds before this. Grillitsch is completely out of your picture, but he's read that game, he knows where that pass is going, and he manages to sneak up behind this player. He gets a foot in, turnover possession, gives the ball into Schlager, and all of a sudden it's a good chance for Austria to create an opportunity there. There's a second one here where he doesn't actually win the ball on this occasion, but the man in possession tries to make that short pass just off to his side. But the pressure from Grillitsch and the panic, that ball is played a little overhit, and it ends up nearly running to the feet of Marko Arnautovic there on the top left of your picture. In this instance, Ukraine do manage to keep possession, but Grillitsch really slowed down the progression of their attack and put them on the back foot, albeit still in possession. The third option here, this pass has been played by the man just on the top left of your screen, trying to zip that into the feet of number 17 there in the centre circle. Grillitsch from about 10 yards away reads it, managed to get in there in that passing line, makes the interception, starts an attack, which eventually leads to the corner that Austria actually score from. But almost everything he did was influential. He never, in the 25 minutes of the game that I watched, stepped out of place or was caught out of position or made a rash decision. He was so composed and intelligent when he was picking the press, and it really was an impressive performance from him. In terms of him in possession, which is a very different story, and I think it's an even more interesting one. He, throughout the game, played safe but progressive and incisive passes. And Julian Nagelsmann, who coached Grillitsch at Hoffenheim back in the early stages of his time at the club, he said in 2020 that Grillitsch is one of the top 6 defensive midfielders in the Bundesliga, and he is excellent at controlling the pace of the game. Now, how did he do that in this one? It's very interesting. The majority of his passes in this game were with Hinteregger and Dragovic, so the two centre-backs he was playing in front of. 28% of his completed passes were to the centre-backs, and 29% of the passes he received were from the centre-backs. Now, what this did, very interestingly, is when he got that ball sitting in front of the sitting in front of the centre-backs. What he was essentially faced with was that rigid 4-5-1 by Ukraine, with Roman Yaremchuk being that man, the one up top for Ukraine, sitting right in front of him, and he's making that press. But when that ball was spread out a little bit wider to the fullbacks either side of him, it forced the Ukrainian centre midfielders into a bit of a press. It wasn't really a full press from them. They were happy to kind of sit off the ball. But in order to try and subdue the options that were available, those centre midfielders were forced into a half press, which then created that space for Marcel Sabitzer or for Schlager or Leimer, whoever it was, to sit into that half space, get possession, turn, and they're on the front foot. They've passed that half press from Ukraine. They're past those midfield lines. And it was really important. And again, mentioning the dirty work that Grillitsch likes to do, he wasn't trying too hard to make those special passes, to be the one to create that space, but he was happy to just play the ball sideways and allow things then to naturally commence so Austria could get on the front foot. Another interesting point, we look at his passing matrix here. So as you look on that yellow line highlighted across, those are the passes that he's made. There's another vertical line that shows the passes he received, but he's linked up with every player throughout the game there, bar one. And he's never actually received a pass from Xaver Schlager in this game, which I thought was a really interesting point. It's the only blank in the matrix for Grillitsch. And in a way shows that there's no sideways passes there. He's not just passing for the sake of it. Every pass had an intent, whether it was one of those 7 passes into Sabitzer or one of those 5 passes into Arnautovic, or playing it back to the centre-backs to allow that kind of tactical style to commence from there. Everything had a point. You can see he completed 18 passes to those more advanced midfielders as well. So it wasn't just those conservative passes backwards, including 7 to Sabitzer alone, as I mentioned there. On the right-hand side there, that second graph, you can see the distance of his passes. So nearly the vast majority of them were these medium-length passes. So 39 out of 43 of those completed, an 85% pass accuracy over the entire game, with 56 out of 67 passes completed. So much interesting things to look at here. And just finally, this stats summary, courtesy of Goal Point. 5 high-value attacking passes, 6 of his 9 long passes accurate. He's a lot of defensive actions in the opposition half as well. I've already shown you 3 of those, 4 interceptions and 10 possession recoveries as well, which is significantly higher than his midfield partner in Xaver Schlager. A really incredible performance, and it was noticed by everyone. UEFA's official star of the match was Florian Grillitsch, and the UEFA technical observer Cosman Contra said he gave balance to the team and was very good with the ball, a good effort for the entire match. Breaking the lines as well in their analysis of this game, said Austria dominated Ukraine in midfield and ultimately won the game as a result of that. Schlager as well as Grillitsch are to be praised for it, and I really enjoyed watching this game back. I was like a bit tentative going into it, like, why am I watching this? What am I actually going to find out? But what I found out is Grillitsch has so many traits and so many attributes that I think we are lacking in this team right now. And I've said it quite a bit that I really feel we need a number 10, because we have in Højbjerg and Skip 2 midfielders who are damn good at the job that they do, but the job that they don't do, which isn't a criticism of them, just maybe a limitation of their game, is that they're not really those players who can progress the ball a lot. I think Grillitsch can do the job they do, but also have that added value of being able to move the ball up the pitch, whether it's in passing the ball himself or similar styles there as he was with Dragovic and Hinteregger. He's a very, very good target for us to have. He could be very cheap. We may end up getting him for free in the summer. I think I'd rather we get him in sooner in January if we are going to make that deal. But the only downside is Højbjerg or Skip are going to suffer. One of them is going to lose their place in this team. I don't see Grillitsch being the centre back, the centre back in our team, because Antonio Conte has just said he feels Eric Dyer can become one of the best in the world in that position. So I don't think there's any chance of Grillitsch really taking that position. If you're looking at the 2 wider places, I know Antonio Conte likes to play with really offensive centre-backs there. Look at what Ben Davies has done in the last 2 months since Conte came in, and look at Alessandro Bastoni, who I want at Spurs, who has done that in recent years. I'm just not really sure if Grillitsch, at the moment, with not much experience in the centre-back position, can now make another shift and play as a wider centre-back in a 3. So I think one of Højbjerg or Skip loses out if we do get Grillitsch. And I think the one that it is will show a lot what Antonio Conte wants to do at Tottenham and how long he wants to be here. If he's here for the future, I think Højbjerg loses out. If he's here for the now and immediate success, I think Skip loses out. But only time will tell where that really goes. But very, very good target for us to have, and one that I'm hoping there's a lot of truth to these rumours. As I said, both Sky Germany and Sky Austria saying that Tottenham are interested and have maybe already inquired about the player. But with Roma and AC Milan also in the mix for this one, we'll have to wait and see how it pans out. Now, the game with Florian Grillitsch at centre-back that I've decided to look at is Hoffenheim's 2-0 victory over RB Leipzig in the Bundesliga last month. One of the final nails in the coffin of Jesse Marsch, who was, of course, sacked by Leipzig not too long after this game, but an impressive victory for Hoffenheim nonetheless. And the interesting thing is, if we look at the tactical lineups here from the Bundesliga, you will see Grillitsch in the middle of a three-man midfield in a 4-3-3 with Samaseku and Geiger, but it wasn't really the case with him in this game. In possession, I think this is more accurate that he was playing more advanced than Vogt and Posch, but out of possession, which is how Hoffenheim spent the majority of this game, he was in between those two centre-backs. In what times with those full-backs was often a back four, with Posch being forced out to right back and Raum playing left back with Akpoglu a bit further up. But yeah, it is fair to say he was playing in a much more defensive role in this game. Now, again, in possession, that wasn't the case. We can see quite a few examples here from right early on in the game when Hoffenheim are in possession. He's stepping up into the space left behind the Leipzig high press to get the ball advanced past that press of Andre Silva and of the few other players in there in that midfield line for Leipzig as well. And it really helped Hoffenheim getting out in this game. Now, it is worth noting in the first 20 minutes that Hoffenheim rarely got out, despite the fact that they took an early lead. They spent a lot of this game on the back foot. And even when they weren't in possession, they were pressing high up the pitch at times, but it really wasn't the best opening to this game from a performance and a tactical point for Hoffenheim. But quite often you see Grillitsch getting into that midfield position to pick up possession. There was a few moments when he did really join those attacks as well. We can see this about 10-15 minutes into the game for a typical centre-back in a back three. For example, you can't imagine Eric Dyer playing in this position for Tottenham. So it's interesting in this game that is kind of regarded as one of the games where he played centre-back. He still was playing a very progressive game and getting high up the pitch whenever it was possible. And having that confidence in his ball-playing ability and having that experience, of course, in the past as being an attacking midfielder who's slowly becoming more aggressive as a footballer, he has that ability in possession and he has that confidence in possession. And I think it's really key. So many times in this game, he was extremely comfortable in possession, despite that high press from Andre Silva, from Nkunku, from Szoboszlai as well. And this one, for example, you can see a massive gap between that defensive line for Hoffenheim in possession and the midfielders as well, which you don't really want when you're a centre-back in possession back there. But in this moment, Andre Silva putting the press on him. And what's interesting is Grillitsch actually waited a couple of seconds and he waited for that midfielder, I think it's Geiger, to get into a position where he could be comfortable in receiving that pass. So he allowed that press to come onto him. He enticed it in order to pass around. It made a good ball into Geiger. He then spun off the other way, got the ball back, and as Geiger was getting pressed, put the ball in behind the midfielder, and all of a sudden the whole pitch was open in front of Geiger, and they managed to press out of it there. And this is another example. He had the ball inside his own box as this press coming from all different angles, and he dribbled it out into this tiny bit of space there, and was able to play that ball into the half space then as well for Hoffenheim to progress out of that. And that ball playing ability in an Antonio Conte team, especially if he is going to be playing centre back, as I mentioned, I don't think that's the position he will be playing, but that versatility and that option being there would be very important for Tottenham, and he certainly has the ability. And we look at a few quotes in a second, but one of them is from Hoffenheim head coach Sebastian Hoeneß, who has really put Grillitsch into this position, who says the way he interprets playing at centre-back is fantastic. And he just has that expansive mindset of a midfielder that he can bring back in there, as well as that kind of defensive nous and the kind of physicality that some creative midfielders, as he used to be, don't really have. So he got an incredible kind of collection of attributes that he can bring into this position. Now, out of possession is a massive difference from this one. Grillitsch played a lot deeper out of possession. You can see here with Leipzig in the ball just inside the Hoffenheim half. He's sitting right back in between those two centre backs. Again, at times sitting back there to man mark Andre Silva, and he did a very good job of it. I mean, despite the shortcomings and the failings of Leipzig, keeping a clean sheet against them is in itself an impressive achievement, especially Andre Silva, who people will forget outscored Erling Haaland in the Bundesliga last season. Grillitsch was very confident and very capable in that role. They also played a very high line, an extremely high line, and Grillitsch quite often, as I said, can be seen kind of being the deeper defender in that line, but was very comfortable in there. And when it was needed, there were a few times where he showed really, really good recovery pace. And this one in particular, that ball is played into that wide channel and it's Andre Silva sprinting after it. And Grillitsch uses his strength, uses his pace to do very well, kind of gets his body across Andre Silva, brings the ball out the other side and ends up getting fouled. And it is a free kick for Hoffenheim from there. But even in terms of being more aggressive out of possession. We looked at in that game against Austria the way he stepped up and made very good decisions in his aggressive pressing and those interceptions. And this is another one in here. He's quite a few yards off Silva when this pass is made, and he managed to get in there, get his foot on that ball. And look, if he sits off and lets Andre Silva turn in that position, it's a very, very dangerous situation for Hoffenheim. But he goes in there, gets that foot in, turns over the possession, and it's a lot more comfortable, and Hoffenheim can try to build from the back as well. And there were times he stood up in this high press. This ends up being a long ball from Leipzig, which I think the defender wins rather comfortably there, invoked. But you can see how advanced Grillitsch is. Again, just imagine that being Dyer in Tottenham's back three. It's a very different situation. And again, a reason why I don't really think Grillitsch will play in that position for Tottenham. But I expected to see a much different performance from a tactical standpoint from Grillitsch in that game for Hoffenheim, but a lot of similarities in there, and I think it just goes to show that he can bring these attributes to a number of different positions. And the Hoffenheim sporting director Alexander Rosen has alluded to that in the past. He said Florian is an extremely gifted footballer. He has a real football brain and great technique, and it can apply himself to a number of different roles. And it just goes to show with this that versatility could be absolutely priceless to whatever team he plays with. Centre-back out of possession, midfielder in possession, and then doing everything in that middle of the park for Austria in that earlier game against Ukraine. The Bundesliga themselves, in their analysis of the player, have actually likened him to Bastian Schweinsteiger, who we will know as one of the great midfielders of the last 20 or so years. They've said Grillitsch's hounding of opposition players, coupled with his ability to roll his man, carry the ball, and ping passes left, right, and centre, is reminiscent of prime Bastian Schweinsteiger. The Austria international also has versatility in common with the Bayern Munich and Germany legend, who was an attacking wide player in his youth and featured at centre-back in his twilight years at Chicago Fire. So real high praise and a very, very good comparison there for Grillitsch. And look, if you're looking for a player to bring in, one that's being likened to someone like Schweinsteiger is a damn good place to start. And then you look at whether or not Tottenham can get this deal done. I imagine we'd be looking for a lot of players in January. We've already heard today, recording this Wednesday, that Tottenham are interested in a right back. We want a striker, and already we know we will be looking for a centre back. If I'm right, Grillitsch will not be brought in as a centre back, but that's 4 players we're looking for in this window. And Grillitsch, having looked into him, will be right up the top of my list. And like I mentioned earlier, who loses their place in the team? Is it Højbjerg? Is it Skip? Well, I think it's one of them. It really just depends, like I said, on what Antonio Conte is trying to build at Tottenham. If it's immediate success or if it's a long-term project, one of those is going to lose out. If I had to pick now, I think it will be Højbjerg, but I don't really want that to happen. The 3 of them in the midfield together, I just think is too preservative. It's too defensive, and there is ability in there to progress the ball up the pitch, but 3 defensive midfielders I don't think is what Tottenham need to do right now, especially if we're going to be playing 3 centre-backs as well. I think we're back then in position of park the bus counter-attack team, which I don't think we really want to be. I mean, if it brings us success, fantastic, but we want to play good football. We've seen that in the last couple of weeks, so let's not take that step back. I don't think that will happen. But Grillitsch, if I had to pick, I'd sign him. I think he's a very good target. Do let me know in the comments your thoughts on this one. If you wanted him before, and if I've changed your mind, or if you've learned new things about him, please do let me know in the comments below. If you've any idea where he might play for Tottenham, put it down there. And as well, if there's any other targets that you think could be better for these positions that Grillitsch may fill at Tottenham, please do let me know down below. But make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already for more of these analyses and for more general transfer talk videos. Also, we're going to have a lot of guests on the channel throughout the January transfer window. Do make sure to hit the like button if you have enjoyed this video. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.